how's it going? Today is May 20th, and let's go over what's happening around the world. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Let's get to the news about what's happening on the planet. Look, the Strait of Hormuz, as you know, is currently under a double blockade. A blockade by the United States on one hand, which isn't in Hormuz, but rather in Oman. And another blockade that's being carried out by the Iranians themselves. At this moment, the blockade of Hormuz is keeping everyone on edge amid what they now call the biggest energy collapse of this century. Not only that, but in the last 100 years, nothing like this has happened, and there really isn't a precedent for something like this, right? This strait has been closed, but now Iran has taken full control. It has redefined the global flow according to what experts report over the passage of any strategic vessel related to energy and also global transportation. The mechanism includes inspections, agreements between governments, and possible payments to ensure the safe passage of vessels. This would already be marking an economic shift, even a shift in power on the part of the Iranians. The control exercised mainly by the Revolutionary Guard decides which ships can pass, under what conditions, and also when they can do so. During the journey, a ship was reportedly intercepted by Iranian forces, detected simply because they claimed it was suspected of smuggling. It was never specified what kind of smuggling. In the end, it was released. It's also not clear why. The thing is that when they want to, they do whatever they want. And in this strait, well, the one in control right now is Iran. Iran is prioritizing the passage of ships linked to whom? To its allies. All ships that are allied with China or Chinese interests, or also Russian interests, can pass without any problem. Some vessels that are not Russian or Chinese are paying around $150,000 to guarantee their passage. Although these payments are kept secret due to international sanctions, because any vessel, let's say, related to the West, if it is discovered that they are paying at that moment, they would be punished by the sanctions imposed by Europe and the United States. The fact is that these payments have to be made in secret. Basically, the control has created a bottleneck where thousands of ships, both those wanting to enter and those wanting to leave, are now waiting to see what will happen with Iran. This bottleneck has 1,500 ships on one side. In the Persian Gulf, 1,500 confirmed ships are trapped there. Ship crossings in the strait have dropped sharply. It used to be 140 ships a day, and now it's less than 60. And all of them are related to Russian or Chinese interests. The United States is also taking action such as blockades and targeting Iranian shipments beyond the strait. The situation has been described as the worst energy crisis in history by international organizations due to the direct impact on the global oil flow. It's basically a modification to the energy system as it used to be. Well, they're essentially established designs. Ultimately, these have existed for a long time, and people may or may not agree with them. But they had worked, right? They had worked relatively well for the countries, including Iran, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Oman. All these countries either had that arrangement or were operating that way. What's more, we have to remember that Qatar and Iran, even though they don't get along right now, have a shared area here where together they are extracting gas from this region. Gas that, by the way, Qatar processes into liquefied natural gas. And Iran and Qatar have an agreement in which in the same area, the same field, let's say, is the one they are extracting from. Iran and Qatar benefit in that sense, but for now, they don't get along. Qatar is increasingly arming itself with more defense, thinking that maybe this country, Iran, its neighbor, might not allow it to get out through there, to get out through this area, right? And Qatar doesn't have any other option. It's a very small country. It doesn't have a way to get out through the Red Sea, unlike Saudi Arabia, for example, or Oman, which can also get out through this side, right? The United Arab Emirates faces more difficulty, though it also has an exit in the area that has been attacked. However, this one isn't controlled by the Iranians. Here, it's much farther than the Strait of Hormuz, but everything produced in the United Arab Emirates from this area is not yet connected to this point, to this exit, let's say. Meanwhile, let me tell you that Iran also launched today, waking up and saying it will do whatever it wants. And the most interesting thing is that something must be happening. Something must be generating confidence, because today oil dropped. I mean, the price of oil has fallen. It was at 113, now it's at $106, right? At this moment, while we're live, it's at 106.66. But earlier this morning, it went down to 104.76. That was the price it reached today. The Revolutionary Guard issued a direct warning to the United States and Israel that if they attack again, the conflict will not remain in the Middle East. In other words, they're making it clear that if the conflict continues, the next moves, the next attacks would be, well, in the US, right? Or maybe Europe or somewhere similar. The point is, the next operation or the next step is not for the war to stay in the Middle East, but for the war to expand. The message is clear. Iran is willing to take the war beyond the region, which implies possible global impacts. Iran claims that it has not yet used all of its military power, hinting at an escalation that could be much more destructive. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Saragachi warned that a return to war would bring many more surprises, he says. The Iranian military spokesperson confirmed that they could open new fronts, suggesting simultaneous conflicts in different strategic locations. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump stated that he could resume attacks within days. Sometimes he says he's about to do it, that it will happen the same day or in a few hours. Sometimes he says in days. Well, this time he spoke of an extremely short time frame. He says it will be within 48 to 72 hours. The deadline will be set. I mean, it won't go beyond that, supposedly, but we already know this changes constantly. Iran accuses the United States of violating the ceasefire with these blockades in the Strait of Hormuz, but they also don't lift the blockade they themselves imposed. So these double blockades don't seem to have a solution. Or maybe the only way out will probably be that there's another confrontation. We don't know how far the pressure will go. But right now, while oil prices remain extremely high and the blockade continues, the pressure is completely focused on this area, right? I mean, 20% of the gas, 20% of the oil, aluminum, and other materials have no way out, right? Helium, etc., right? Let's move on to other matters. Look at this rather strange case. Look at this person we're seeing here. He is a former agent of a little-known department in the United States and around the world especially, right? He is someone who, according to what they say, had very important information. He is from the DOE Department of Energy. His name is Kevin Childress, almost like children, but it's Childress, yes. In this case, this special agent from the Department of Energy with 30 years of service passed away. This isn't a recent case. He died some time ago. He passed away at the age of 56 in 2021, yes. The thing is that now, as cases of scientists who have lost their lives or disappeared under strange circumstances are being investigated and who were related to nuclear issues and space technology development, this is coming up. This gentleman had a bit of both. He was very close to certain energy topics. Today I'm going to tell you which ones, but it was also known that he had information about the concealment of unidentified anomalous phenomena. In other words, the WAPs, UFOs, UAPs, or whatever you call them. What is the official version? No. What do we know and what do we want to investigate? This is an ongoing process and still developing. So the strange thing is Kevin Childress, this special agent, passed away suddenly at the age of 56. But we have to remember that at that time in 2021, there was a very complicated situation going on with COVID. A lot of people got sick, and if you had a heart condition or something like that, it was more likely that you would pass away. That was the official version. The official story was that COVID-19 claimed him. It wasn't done. At the time, it wasn't considered necessary to do an autopsy. So there is no autopsy. There is no public forensic report. So in light of this, they said, well, he was sick. He got sick. He got worse and he passed away, right? And that's it. That's the official version. Nothing else is known. Since there were no other suspicions, nothing further came of it. There is a report, an interview with Luis Elizondo, the former director of the U.S. Intelligence Research Program. He has been very focused on the investigation of UAPs and declassification and all of that. He claims that this man was planning it. He was planning to expose information about the involvement of the Department of Energy, that is, the outcome, in the recovery and concealment of the unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAPs. This is an investigation that is still ongoing. It's a case that doesn't seem to be an isolated incident, and that's what makes it curious. You can't say that for just that reason. So does that mean they eliminated him? No, right? I'm just saying if we're serious, we should investigate. I mean, we have to make sure it doesn't just stay like that, especially because you're seeing it both before 2021 and after 2021. Well, there's a certain pattern of people who had important knowledge, and then they left under odd circumstances. And some you don't even know where they are, right? According to what they report, he wasn't a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. He was, well, a relatively normal person, let's say. But since there's a very thorough investigation going on into curious cases of strange deaths, he's another one that could be added. He's not a scientist, right? But because of what he was going to reveal, and that he was already preparing his information to present to Congress, it really draws a lot of attention. We are, according to reports, facing a possible jurisdictional conflict that affected democratic transparency. The Department of Energy would be operating advanced technology programs outside of congressional oversight. And that's what I was going to add as some additional information. Kevin Childress said the following while he was alive. I feel that the Department of Energy is trying to silence me. He said this weeks before his death to Luis Elizondo, who is one of the main witnesses. And here it is for me. That's the most important part. I mean, there are two things. The first is that there is testimony that he was feeling pressure from people who wanted to silence him. Because without that information, you might say, well, it's just pure conspiracy theory. I mean, these are facts. They're jumping to conclusions too fast, right? But the fact that there is at least this testimony and that it says, look, weeks before, he told me this is this and this. There really is something interesting to investigate here, right? And also, another thing that's really interesting is that it wasn't a secret that he was going to disclose this information. I mean, that's also known. So there are already several things adding up, right? One, the fact that he said they were trying to silence him. Two, that he had information that he was going to reveal about the Department of Energy's handling of the alleged concealment of strange technologies. Let's put it that way, right? Let's say it. Well, at least that's what I think, right? I don't know what you all think, but at least I would think it should be investigated out of obligation, right? There are several things I'd like to mention before anything else, but there's a report from Sabana, Riverside, which is one of the ones that published this, others from the Daily Mail, which isn't a media outlet. I mean, sometimes they exaggerate certain things. That's why I'm cautious with this topic. But Luis Elizondo, at least for me, has been very consistent in his report. And well, if he says this, I think it's possible that's how it happened and that it should be investigated, right? Investigate. That we have to investigate and analyze this case and not forget that it's another one. or possibly another one, right? You can't draw a full conclusion, but it's interesting as a separate point, which also needs investigation. Who has the information he was going to reveal? Does his family have it? A friend, someone who could show it? Because I'm sure that if he thought they were going to silence him, he must have given that information to someone else, right? That's what I think. According to reports, Kevin's testimony would have been directly involved with the Department of Energy. This was in a program for the recovery and concealment of unidentified anomalous phenomena called UAPs or UFOs. He worked at Shabana in a facility called Shabana Riverside, where information has been obtained. And one thing that stands out is that this place, this Shabana Riverside, where this happens, the place where this happened is a facility that is key for the production of nuclear tritium, a place with historical reports of sightings. Since 1952, there have been sightings in that area. So all the elements are there. Elements related to nuclear matters, elements related to UFOs, and elements that have to do with a cover-up that he himself reported. So honestly, there's something strange here, right? There's something here that at the very least, I insist it should be looked into and investigated, right? Hopefully, because up until now, nobody knows. This is a complaint made by Luis Elizondo himself. But it would be really interesting if it went further, right? If it was investigated more deeply and didn't just stay there, right? For the FBI to add these cases to those of the other 12 scientists, right? I insist, not all of them are scientists. He's not really one of the scientists either, right? But they are close to the subject or are important figures in this area, right? So this case has a bit of everything. Well, we'll keep analyzing it. Let's move on to other, also important topics. Check out this image. Here you go. Look, according to reports, there was this fireball. No, this happened near the iconic bull statue over there on Wall Street in New York City. Apparently, it was a car that caught on fire, right? Some of the images, some of the photos and videos that are out there, well, they show this situation, right? Closely monitor the situation. Yes, there was a fire. So was it because of some kind of accident or what happened? The report says the following. A vehicle reportedly caught fire and then exploded near the iconic bull statue or the charging bull. Not the bulls, no, or police, no. When on Wall Street or with stocks you're going up, you say, well, you're bullish, right? So, well, in that area where the international markets are and all that, that's where this situation happened. It definitely draws attention. Currently, nothing else is known, right? We'll watch to see what happened on Wall Street, right? Let's see if there are any other details. We'll be talking about it. Obviously, this is still developing. And look, since we're talking about other matters, since we're already on that topic in New York. Check this out. It's happening. Well, a series of movements. Now then, on the topic of finances and all this, what's important is what happened. The price of oil dropped and obviously stocks went up. Let's put this image here. There it is. It went up. The shares of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ went up. Although it did drop today, that's 2 straight days of declines. Today, the NASDAQ is quickly recovering. Here we can see it. All of this went up. First it dropped here. Now it's rising. We'll see if it finishes positive or in negative territory. But something's happening with oil. We're seeing that the price is dropping to 106. I mean, it's still expensive. But obviously, that's something positive. We'll see how it goes later on. Meanwhile, the Nikkei, for example, in Japan, opened positive. I mean, it even opened and closed positive. right? The Nikkei went up. They must see something positive about the oil issue, right? The same thing didn't happen with Korea since Korea is still down. It closed lower than the previous day. So not everything is good news either. The whole market situation is kind of strange and irregular. So we'll also be keeping an eye on that detail. How have you all been? How's everything going? I hope everyone is doing well. I'm really glad to be here with you for a little while and to be able to talk about everything that's happening in the world during the day. We'll keep you updated, keep bringing you information, and I really appreciate you staying with us. Let's just stay alert to how things are developing in Iran because obviously it's intensifying. It's not getting any better. No, the situation is pretty intense, and there's no sign of any negotiation happening anywhere. I mean, honestly, if you ask me if I see any opening or any chance for negotiations or something like that, I just don't see it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but yeah, it it catches my attention. It doesn't seem like anything like that is coming. Now, eh, I mean, maybe it could be that. Well, there could be a twist, right? And suddenly we might see the United States acting in a way we didn't imagine. I don't see how. We have to remember the anger the Iranians have had since Soleimani. Since Soleimani, they promised they would take revenge on Trump specifically because they were upset about what happened to Soleimani, right? That's what I insist happened in Trump's first term. In the second term, he eliminates their supreme leader. So that's the highest possible religious figure over there. Eliminating the supreme leader and, so to speak, the whole top leadership has strengthened the most religious hardline sector, which they say is about 20 to 25% of the population, maybe a fourth or a fifth around there. Well, that's the group that has the power, has some of the money, and practically all the weapons. So they are the ones operating internally, and they are the ones controlling the Strait of Hormuz, and they are the ones trying to show strength, right? In response to what do you think will happen? I mean, honestly, if we look at it as a story, like a novel, so to speak, right? Well, what we see here is that it's it's a moment for the Iranians to give back what has been for them the hardest part, the most complicated part, which is having their most important figures eliminated whenever others want. So they also feel strong because they haven't seen the consequences bring them any serious harm, right? And because they know they would have a certain response, right? So in light of this, Donald Trump's calculation has to be whether he wants a short-term conflict, a long-term one, or to end it now, right? And all of them are going to have really complicated consequences for him. All of them, right? If he gives more power to Iran's regime, he ends up in a weakened position. If he stays, it will likely have to be a long war, which will also have human and political repercussions within the United States and worldwide. And Europe and Australia, etc. Oceania, Asia. Well, they don't know what to do. I mean, they don't know or they don't want to know, but they prefer to just wait and see what happens, right? And to stretch things out as much as possible without having to take action, right? Without having to get into trouble. Just kidding. That, well, adds to how complicated this whole conflict has been. Well, listen, we have a section within the playlist for strange news because sometimes, quite often, actually, there are weird, curious, interesting news stories. And there's the section so that whenever you get the chance, you can check it out, right? And obviously, well, we're broadcasting every day, both here and on Pepe News, where we're also live on Pepe, just like on Pepe News, keeping you informed in detail about what's happening in the world, right? Thank you all for joining. Leonardo, how have you been? Great to see you. You're back now. How did it go? How many days did you spend up there in the mountains? Leonardo, hopefully you can tell us a little bit about how the experience was. It must be really interesting and impactful. Sending greetings, Leonardo. Glad you're doing well. A greeting to your family as well. Omar, how have you been? We were just talking about it yesterday, that New York is breaking records. Well, over there you have more heat than we do because you reported 38 degrees yesterday. And let me tell you what it's like here. But I really doubt we've been at 38 degrees, right? Right now we're at 29 degrees. And that's it. But that's how it's been. I mean, it's been relatively cool. So how have you guys stopped checking the temperature here? In New York, right? Let me check at this moment because it shouldn't be the warmest time, but they're almost the same as us. They're a little bit warmer. We're at 29 here, right? You guys are over there at 32 degrees at least. That's what it shows me here, 32 degrees at this moment, right? I don't know if it's going to get hotter later or on the contrary, if it's already starting to cool down. Look, maybe it'll start cooling down later. Look, yeah, it's already cooling down. So this is it. This is the peak heat right now, and we'll hit our peak heat a little later. Look, here it shows 30 degrees in Monterrey, and a little later it shows 29. No, that's it. It doesn't go higher than that. We're basically in the same situation, except you're in New York, where it's supposed to be cooler over there. Great. Then, well, okay, let's go. How are you, Fabricio? Miguel, greetings. Omar says the workshop thermometer read 42 yesterday. Obviously in the sun.
Of course, in the sun.
Oh, yeah. No, just imagine. No, of course. I mean, if you're working, there are certain places that are super hot for work. For example, outside, obviously. Some time ago, I had to be at some recordings, and in one of them, there was a person working at a grill in Monterrey, outside, with the grill and the whole metal structure. I asked him if he'd measured how hot it gets here, because I was there and usually handle heat well, but it felt intense. And of course, it was just for a period of time, right? And he told me that he measured it at around 65 to 70 degrees right at the grill. Super hot, super hot. I don't know how his internal thermostat works because it's just unbelievable. But this guy, I think he could survive out in the Sahara, right? And in all those places without a problem. He wouldn't even be bothered. How have you been, Aurelio? Miguel? Hello there, says Aurelio. Over there in New Mexico, 66 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Which is cool, right? Still good. Let's see how much 66 degrees Fahrenheit is. Let's put it here on the screen. 66 degrees is like 20 or 20 something. It's 20 something degrees. Let's see, I have it here. So 66 degrees would be about 19, 20 degrees around there. It's very comfortable over there. A big hello, Aurelio Beto. How have you been? He says, but I'm back with my sharp comments that cut deep. That's it, Leonardo. Great. Well, let's go. Let's go to the report. Let's go to what's happening in the world. Let's see what details there are. Let's go to another report right away, okay? We're starting off like this. Let's head over there right away.